Okay, so we are spiritual beings in a human physical body. Our thinking creates the reality around us through vibration, frequency, and eventually energy, which is, I suppose, a kind of matter, but I'm not a scientist, so I'm not sure about that. But the frequency, the vibration, the human emotion, the human feeling, combined with how they are thinking, which is really mainly the feeling, mainly the emotion, that will create the reality. You know, you can think a thought, but without the intent, the feeling behind it, it's no good even wanting it without correct feeling behind it. I'm not explaining this very well, but you know, I'm not sure 100% how it works. I only know it does work. I see it firsthand. So if you see something firsthand, you don't have to understand the mechanics of it. You know it works. You see it. And that's all I can really say about that, is that without the feeling and the emotional component, I have to emphasize this, and I'm repeating myself to those that have listened before, but you know, without the emotion, without the feeling behind the thought, because thoughts can be quite random, whereas the emotions are quite powerful. This is the main difference, and they are connected to other human beings too. All human beings are connected, but they're connected, you could say telepathically. It's like an invisible thread that connects them all with their thinking. Now, you know, human beings influence one another, sure. You see that on a daily basis. You see that effect. I see that quite a lot, where you will see one person do one thing and someone else will copy or follow. This, you know, most people would say this is conscious, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a direct observation and you copy. But I'm talking about where you could be influencing someone that you actually don't see. Now, you know, in other words, they could be miles away. Whereas if you're close to someone and you see them do something and you imitate or copy that's not really a thought thing. But it could be, but it is more of an observation that you've copied in a very physical way. Whereas if you know, you see the effects of your thinking where there's no physical connection, well, that has to be a thought vibration or a thought transference almost. I don't know what words to use to describe these things, because like the title of the video, what was it? I'm keeping on that. I'm keeping on the hocus pocus, because I've spelled hocus pocus wrong a few times, so I hope it's right this time. I know how to spell it, but it doesn't seem to print itself that way because, you know, that's technology, you know. It may or may not get it right. But, you know, it is a hocus pocus world because it isn't just a physical world. The physical comes into being because of human beings. Most people would agree with that. But I am making um, points here in a way because I think that it is wrong to assume that everyone is the same type of human. In other words, as I've said in other videos, but I put it in different ways. There are different dolls on the world, different dolls in the world, as I've said, but they're still all dolls, but different dolls have a different way of operating. This is because they are made differently from the start. And yes, they're created by a different manufacturer. A different creator creates different beings. Now, I'm talking through my hat, and I'm going to say that honestly. You're in fairyland. You don't have to take everything I say 100% literally if you choose not to. I may have some things wrong. I'm still fathoming it out myself. But I think that in a basic kind of way, I've got the basics. And if I haven't, it doesn't matter. It's still it's still what they say, food for thought, and it's worth considering. I would recommend, and I've said this before, but I don't know if anyone does it, don't take any notice of anything I say, because I could be totally false, because this is a very fake world we live in. You cannot believe really most of what you see, hear, whatever, because it's a hocus pocus world. It's designed and set up for humans to test them, to confuse them, to trip them over. But if you look at it in a positive way, which we really should be, I don't do that. And I don't think that is beneficial. I think that even negative things should be looked upon, if you only can, as a positive process of some sort, where, because, like, if I think everything is negative now, that is because I have created that negativity over a lifetime. So in some ways, I've got no one to blame but myself in many ways, okay? And this is kind of how it works. Whereas the more positive you are, the more you do the correct thing. Now, I'm going to confuse everyone by this, because I go from one thing to another. I shouldn't do this, but we're spiritual beings. We're human beings. Human beings are spiritual beings, okay? Don't buy into, as we all do, the illusion that we are physical human beings, that we are here on this earth all alone, and that we just muddle our way through it, and through amazing bad luck, we create havoc, and we destroy, and we dislike and kill, and make life hard for one another. When we're spiritual beings, we're all connected, and our thinking and our feelings, our emotion towards one another is what creates reality. So how can it be that the world is so disharmonious, so scattered, so so destructive to all life? And we are life, and we are destructive to ourselves and our own kind. And this goes against what we really are, and goes against common sense in many ways. Even if you didn't think you're a spiritual being, you'd probably say that doesn't entirely make sense. And yet that is the reality of this world. If you look around, and if you look at the big picture, and even if you actually look which I haven't done, because I only learn things. I learn new insights, you could say, but also they're not even insights, they're just new information that is real. It's not part of my fantasy world where I'm saying, where like at the start you might say, well, I don't think that. You know, that's because, of course you don't think it. A lot of people don't think it because it's not what you've been told. It's not what you have been brought up to believe. Whatever you're brought up to believe, okay, so some people are going to say, I was brought up to believe certain things and now I've walked away from them because they seem too fantastic. You may well have walked away from the truth. This is a very delusionary world. This is the funny thing. Often when we think we've got it figured out and we've got it right, we may be half right, but we also may be half wrong. It's a bit like some people might say, I was brought up to a certain faith, a certain religion, but I saw it was fairyland. Because, of course, all religions appear to be fairyland because they are fairyland, because you can't prove them. And there's a lot of contradiction in the religions. And that's because of the actual reality we live in. Because everything is not as it really should be. And even when you look at different faiths and different beliefs, yes, it is a minefield of confusion. I've gone off the track again. Oh, this is not... See, I know what I'm thinking myself, but I can't say it straight out. I choose not to because I think that, you know, I don't want to be someone that does that. But at the same time, you know, there is truth. Yeah, like someone said, there is truth in the lies and there's lies in the truth. So it's kind of like that. You have to look, I think it comes down to this. I'll say this straight, and I think most people might go along with this actually. I'm going to go back to the saying I said the other day that was said by someone a long time ago, thousands of years ago. And I'm just going to say this saying again because it come to me and it makes some sort of sense to me without going into who, what the different things are about all these people are. You know, and the religions and the faith and all people's belief systems. But, you know, the idea, I've lost my train of thought, as you can see. This person said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, this is like the Father is obviously the God or the Creator, perhaps. Doesn't matter, whatever you like, but I'm only quoting the saying. But what does that, I've said before, what does that mean? I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the God or the Creator except through me. And that person said that me was the way, the truth, and the life. So the way, the truth, and the life is the way to the Creator or to what is. I don't know. I'm trying to put this and I don't understand it. But, you know, in other words, the way, what is the way? The way would, I don't know, what does the way mean? We know what the truth is. Well, we don't know what the truth is, but we know that if you look for the truth, then you are going to get to the source, okay? The Father, the God, the source. That's the word I was looking for, the source. The true, would that be the true creator, or would that would be the source? Whatever. That's assuming I'm taking this saying literally and I'm trying to make something of it because it sounds good, okay? So I'm the way. The way would be the way. The way, perhaps the way is the correct way, the right way, the way that will lead to you flourishing and benefiting and expanding and to where you are safe, etc. The way, if you take it from this kind of angle, from where this quote, shall I say, is coming from, then that way would probably mean no sin. What does no sin mean? I don't know. I've not studied these things, but like no sin, that would mean not to do certain things that will not benefit you. Almost like ground rules so that you are safe, I guess. I don't know. You know, I shouldn't say I don't know. I should pretend that I do know and continue on and be very sure of what I'm saying. But, you know, I kind of think that this is, yes, the way, the truth, and the life. So the way, to follow the example maybe of the person who made the quote, I do not know that there again, but the way of, yes, like no sin, and that means like not doing things that go against yourself and your kind, perhaps. I'm not sure. To follow that kind of ground rules, yes, for your own benefit. But I could be wrong about that if anyone else has a better explanation. Either way, it doesn't matter if it's right. This is what I'm putting here. But because I'm saying that it makes sense whichever way you look at it, if you want to take this quote. And the truth, of course, the truth. How can you fail if you know the truth? Why would you not want to know the truth? Because that would have to enlighten you. It would have to be, why would you want to live in the dark? But we do. In this particular reality, we do, of course. But it's still like not knowing what you are. Because if you don't know the truth, if you don't know what you are not going to follow the way, are you? As I haven't. Because if you don't think that there is, you know, if you don't know the truth of what you are and how you should behave and how you should think about yourself and your fellow human beings, if you've lost that connection and you don't think that that connection exists anyway, you think we're all individuals, which we are. We are definitely all individuals, make no mistake about that. But we're all individuals who are also all connected. You know, but that's like just, you know, we are shown that we have these abilities. You know, it's not a joke when people say some people are psychic or they do this or that. We poo-hoo that to a very large extent because, like myself, I'm not operating that way and I haven't developed that. And I don't even try to develop, because if you don't think that something exists, you're not going to even try to develop it. You're not going to even test it out to see if you are a person. There could be many people walking around, and I'm sure there are, that are psychic, completely psychic, but they don't know they're psychic. In other words, they could get ideas and visions and things, but they don't place emphasis on it. They don't say that is showing me something. They don't say, oh, I should be aware of this. I should take notice of this. They don't say this is something for the future or this is something relevant. They don't do that because they just think it's a hunch or it's because that's what they have been programmed or conditioned to believe. That is their reality. All I'm saying is that maybe we should physically test out some of these things in a serious way. I think maybe we might be surprised. The way, the truth, and the life, and definitely life. That's something that, I'm talking airy-fairy here, but in this hocus pocus Archon earth that we live on, I say that title to impress and to get in, that's true, but it is a hocus pocus world because we are not just here alone operating and muddling our way through. We are dealing with other forces. We are dealing with hocus pocus. Our reality is not what we think at all. It is a lot more complicated and it's a lot more it's a bit like I say, if you limited yourself and you don't know what you are and you don't know what your reality is around you, how can you do anything but fail? How can you create a better world? And this is why the world has gone down so much. Now, whether you want to think that the world has actually really changed, in other words, that we're in a totally different reality, which I think is a possibility, I do not know, but I do know that this world has dramatically changed. But also, if I can let the interference go overhead, even that to me is a negative vibration, that's living in a world that is negative because sound affects the vibration. Very much so. We are frequency and vibration, and that is how we operate. And so if you are receiving negative noise, which is vibration, that is not conducive to you opening up your awareness, shall we say, to any other possibilities. It keeps you very much in this reality, in this dark, solid reality. It makes you focus on the noise and on the object of the noise and on the reality. It doesn't make you expand and say, hey, perhaps I could be changing this reality. But at any rate, it is quite possible that the reality changes all the time. In other words, if it is about frequency and vibration, it's quite possible that the reality can be changed from moment to moment. A bit like a few days ago, the sky was completely blue, which I haven't seen for, it seems like, ages. Most of the time it's murky grey and looks like smoke almost, and the clouds are all strange. Everything looks different to me than a few years ago. My reality certainly even looks physically different. I feel that it's even physically a lot different, and it does change from day to day, but most of the time it's very similar. That's why I was surprised the other day when we had a completely clear blue sky. I have not seen such blueness for quite a while. What am I saying that means? Am I saying that that means that on that particular day, assuming that clouds are a kind of negative thing, which I don't think they are, but because they bring rain. But in this world, it's not all cloud anyway. It's smoke and mirrors, as I've said. We live in a hocus pocus world, and I'm losing any viewers I had by saying that, because if someone is not already, any person that listens to me, and I would prefer for average, normal, unfantasy type people to listen, only in the sense that people who already know that we're in a hocus pocus world, they're probably not going to gain anything. But at the same time, if I talk too hocus pocus, I'm not, because you have to get people in this reality, because if you are like I was before, where you only believe in the concrete reality that's presented to you, the only way that you're going to show human beings who don't think that we live in a strange world, a hocus pocus world, an artificial controlled type of environment, they're only going to be convinced that there's something, that they don't live in a totally random natural world, if you can show them by physical events, by physical aspects of reality. They're not going to be convinced unless you can do that. And this is the problem. Whereas people that have already went through that or seen it for themselves, they don't need any convincing, because they know the world is not what they thought it was, or not what it appears to be to most people. This would depend on, I suppose, when you woke up, or if you've always been awake, or I don't think most people have always been awake, but it's possible some people would know, like this saying, I am the way, the truth and the life. That may come from people who know already that the reality is wrong and that you need to search for the true reality. And that life, that last thing, I think that is something that we don't have at all in this reality. We don't have life. We don't have life because we destroy life. We destroy one another, and then we pretend to be kind to animals. That's no good. It's no good being selective about what life you think is important. That's what I've always done. I say, well, humans are a bit, they've changed. Well, they've become too destructive and too negative, which a lot of them have. And this is, as I've said before, this is just the personality types that have been deliberately created, just as I was deliberately created by the environment and by the world around you. You know, as I've said before, you're only as good as the company you keep, and you're only as good as your environment in many ways, unless you are able to know the way, the truth, and the life just in yourself completely. That's right, and be sure of that. Then you'll be someone that won't be so influenced by your environment. So if you've got a negative person around you, you won't dislike them for being negative, but you also won't be, go along with their negativity. You'll be immune to it all round. You will know that they are just wrong, that they are not the way, that they're not truth, and that they're not life. Because once you become negative, you do become anti-life in some ways, and particularly anti-human life. And I have to stress this, because I think it's important. I do, because I've always preferred myself, because if you're around human beings that are negative, that makes you against your own kind. This also is an environmental matrix ploy, I think. In other words, this is to make you mistrustful of your own kind. So you prefer the animals and the birds because they are more innocent. You see them as more untouched, more unsullied by, or uncorrupted. But this is not really true. This is really not true. And also, why, of course, that is more appealing to me, more appealing to you probably too. But at the same time, of course they are not going to be as corrupted, because if the environment hasn't deliberately targeted them and made their environment so negative, and because humans are more advanced mentally, of course they are open to that corruption. They can be manipulated, they can be twisted. And that is because they do have strong emotions and strong feelings, because they are a good species. But that can be used against them. You can start out as a baby and a child as wanting love and being the most loving, wonderful person. But if you don't get it back, if that is slapped back in your face, which it is to a lot of us, and I've slapped it back too, because you get trained that way. We all get trained, and then the sins of the father will be passed on to the children. I got that from the Life for Ruth movie that I did in the video. It's amazing the things that I pick up from movies. Most of it probably seems nonsensical to you, and in a way it's a bit nonsensical even to me, only in the sense that I just pick it up and I get a brainwave almost as though I think it's something greatly profound. It's really not. And sometimes it doesn't always make sense in the context of what I'm saying, but at the same time, I sort of, in my own head, I think it does, because, see, in a clear world, in a clean, clear, perfect world, which we should have, or at least when I say perfect, I mean just to where it is natural and not so contaminated. I think it's completely contaminated. It's contaminated deliberately, and this contamination is physical, but it's also mental. And you see, the mental is the main thing in a way, even though we don't realise that. Our minds become contaminated, and then the world becomes contaminated physically. We think it's the other way around, but I think that in many ways it's our own minds that get contaminated first, and then we consequently contaminate the world around us at a physical level. That's sounding very profound, isn't it, type of thing. But it's quite logical in a way, because our thinking is what creates the reality. And, like it or not, it might be more extreme than what even I think, but it might be slightly less extreme too. Because also, if you become negative, you almost don't care so much either too. That's another thing. And I think that, like, even if you want a less contaminated world, what is your reason for that? Is that just for your survival? Or is it for your own kind survival? Is it because you're angry that maybe the natural world will be destroyed? It depends on, this is what I'm trying to say, is what world do people really want? I think this is what it comes down to. I'm going to get perhaps a bit angry here, and it doesn't matter, because it's not going to make any difference if I get angry or not, because, I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. But really, it does come, I think that, like I say, if we were in a less contaminated world, we would be a lot clearer in our thinking. Even I would be clearer. I would get the ideas, and I would get these connections to things, even from stuff. I wouldn't have the plane going over that disrupts the thinking. So I would be able to put it all into a clear picture, and therefore my reality would become a clear picture instead of a muddled up, contaminated, messed up world like it is. Like we all get our little revelations, as I do, but they're not coherent. They're not putting into the whole picture. We haven't got the full emotion and vibration behind it. We're just sprouting ideas like I am. I'm just saying, like, oh yes, we're naughty, we should look after this, we should do that. We're wrong in this way and we're right in that way. It's like that. But we're not getting just that full vibration going all together to where everything will be righted. That's as simple as that, really. That's how simple the human being really is. But we've complicated it because we don't understand that, and we don't feel that. If we just, in fact, as I've said before, the human being who just feels okay and just has a warm feeling will be doing more good in this world than all my yak yak here and all my hocus pocus stuff and all my information. I've said now, I think we have to go that, I have to go the technological information route, because most people are not capable of going just the vibrational frequency route. In other words, they're just not capable of getting that frequency and that vibration and that good emotion, that good feeling going in themselves, for themselves, and then that will be for other people as well. That they're just not doing that. Most of us don't like ourselves, to be quite frank. That is the truth. I know I don't. And it's like that. It's like you might even say, oh, I understand why this happened. You know, I'm blaming the Matrix, so I should feel good. But because we are human, we actually still can't let go of guilt of what has been done, what we have done. And we're not allowed to let go of it either, because the Matrix likes us to hang on. Because in reality, even if you have done the worst, heinous things, you know, right from this very second, you can still turn it all round. This society, this Matrix doesn't lead us to believe that that's possible. In fact, it's like you've done something wrong, you can never change, you're punished now for the rest of your life, this sort of thing. It's like that. And sometimes that is the reality, because the person won't change or won't realise that. Sometimes I suppose you think, if you've done so many bad things, you think, oh, well, a bit like saying heaven and hell. You're like, oh, well, look, I don't think I've got much chance of heaven, so I may as well, you know, accept that I'm going to hell, so I shall just continue on, because I don't think that I could ever. But in reality, that's not really the case. Reality is an illusion. There is no reality. There's only the moment. Things can be changed from moment to moment, I think. So really there is no past and there is no future, but we hang on to the past. I've known people that live in the past. I do too. I lived in it too. You know, like if something happened, I wouldn't be able to let go of it for years. It would plague my thoughts. So in other words, the negativity just goes on for years. You can't let, but how can you when we are not operating that way and we don't think that's reality? You know, when we've just been brought down to that level. You know, I think. Because the sky was very blue the other day. The next day it was back to grey. It's raining now. That's okay to have the variances. But, and also, is that because of human emotion feeling? You know, I've heard some people say that some people can create tornadoes, and if they're angry, the wind can be destructive. All this, I don't know how much truth there is that, but it is my idea now that, and I think that if you can change reality with thinking in small ways, there's no reason that some people might not have more ability that way. That's not because they are more powerful, but merely because they have probably developed that more. They're more aware of that. You know, whereas like myself, if you've been unaware of it and you haven't developed it and you don't consciously act on it, you don't even know how to almost. Natural, you know what I'm saying? So that's like some people that are psychic, etc. They may have more of an ability that way because they have believed in it, and so therefore they've concentrated on that, despite the reality that they are not living in their own world. So they're not free to do that to the highest level, I wouldn't think, but I don't know. But I wouldn't think so, because even low, supposing there was this is fantasy land, by the way, as you know, it always is with me. But supposing you're a human being that could influence the rain, right? Okay. You like that movie I saw many years ago called The Rainmaker, where this man believed that he could bring rain. And he was particularly valuable in places where they hadn't had rain for quite a while, called The Rainmaker. But a lot of people didn't believe that he could, but he believed it, and that was his occupation almost. But anyway, supposing there was a rainmaker, people, or at least I would personally presume that it would be the ability of all authentic type human beings anyway, if this was the case. But supposing, yes, like him, he had always believed that. And he wondered why. He knew he was a rainmaker and he believed it. And he wondered why he couldn't bring the rain. A lot of the time he could not bring the rain. So why couldn't he bring the rain? And that is because, yes, he was in the matrix. He wasn't in a natural world. In a natural world, he should have been able to bring the rain. But, you know, he's in the matrix, an artificially constructed world that is controlled by other entities, other beings. So they, through technology and their own hocus pocus, their own means, have taken control of the rain. So he would have to be a lot more powerful to bring that rain. In other words, if the matrix is stopping him and stopping the rain from coming by, say, a technical means, because the matrix is more technical now, and the God entity likes technology. Human beings like technology now too. I will add that when the Rainmaker movie was made, there was no technology. This is an old movie, 60s. So they didn't have technology then. But even then, I wondered why he could not bring rain instantly, or at least fairly quickly, and this is because there's always been the matrix, or at least it's been for a long, long time, okay? So, and that's why, because you're not in a world where we don't have an opposing force, or where others also have control. In other words, it'd be like this, right? I think. Okay, so I can, imagine that I can, which I can't, but imagine that I can, bring the rain. And that fella can bring the rain too, the rainmaker man. But he wants to bring the rain, but I don't want to bring the rain. He wants the rain, I want to keep it dry for a while. So therefore, I will be at odds with him. He will be trying with all his might to bring the rain, and I will be trying with all my might to stop the rain. We're not in conjunction, we're not in harmony, So if I'm a different being to him and I've got a different idea, I'll stop the rain. And if I have, and also he should perhaps be in conjunction with other human beings, because human beings operate a bit different. So do the other forces too, no doubt. So does the positive and negative. They all have their numbers. But if you've got less numbers, and if your numbers are not on your side and they're not operating and they're feeling negative and they're more interested in the matrix and playing in the physical world and they're not interested in the rain, you'll be operating solo and you'll be up against the might of the matrix, up against the might of other beings that also have the power to control the elements, shall we say, or the mechanics of the matrix, So it is a dual, it's a dual world in that respect too. You know how I say it's a duality world? Well, it's very much a dual, but two operating very much in not operating and not aware that they've got opposing forces and not aware that they are the rainmaker either. So as you can see, it's but I've gone off that, but you see what I'm trying to say is that there is the opposing forces. If that could also have a lot of, if you have a lot of people that have the power to control the rain, then, if they're not all in sync and they're not all in agreement that we will bring rain, then whoever has the most power, or the most numbers even, and the most hocus pocus, shall we say, that means like magic, because it's all magic, isn't it? If you can bring rain and you're a rainmaker, we are talking about magic here. We're not talking about what we would think is reality. Most people think that nature brings rain, that it just happens. The clouds somehow bump together or something and produce rain. I'm sure there's a scientific explanation for it. And yes, there is science. But science can be manipulated by human thought, and science can be manipulated by technology. Science is technology to some extent. There again, I didn't know what I just said then. It sounded good, didn't it? But yes, I think that science to some extent is a lot more technical. We're kind of looking in a funny kind of way. Yeah, it's more technical. It's more physical, more practical. It's not, but is it reality? Is it the whole picture? But at any rate, either way, even that idea of the world where you have like two sets of beings, shall we say, and one is positive and one is negative. As I've said before, I would say that regardless of whether you believe anything that humans are meant to be at a higher level, because personally, or not, either way, I would say that regardless of saying the way, the truth and the life, which sounds very faith orientated, very as though you're accepting certain beliefs and certain denominations, almost a religion, a faith, whatever. I don't think that matters. I'm saying that whichever way you look at it in this world, even if it comes right down to just this stark physical reality, which I certainly don't think that's all there is, but if that was still the case, you're still looking at, on a daily basis, this positive and negative thing going on. And I think that regardless of that, even people who are very, who just believe that they are the center of the universe, shall we say, which, like each individual, because obviously a lot of individuals think that it's all just about them. I'm not putting this very well, but even if you're at that level and you believe that to be true, I still think that in this reality, the negative forces are meant to have the positive forces coming up against them all the time. If they don't, the world gets out of sync like it is. So every time you see something that you think is not a positive for yourself, even if it's just for yourself, you say, hey, I don't really agree with that. The rest might agree with it, but I don't agree with it. I don't think they should put an extra set of lights down the road. It might be something quite simple. If you don't put up your opposition to that, and you allow things to happen, which is mainly what we do, then, you're defeating your own reality anyway, even if it's at a practical, real level. Most people tend to go with the flow, go with the majority, and, the majority then goes with the minority in a way, because it's like, who does this really all come from? And of course, originally, it comes from the Matrix. It comes from the forces that control the matrix. And they are largely here on a negative basis, because they are here, whichever way you look at it, to expect humans to be putting up the opposition. They put out a lot of negative, and they expect the humans to counter it with positive, because they know that's what humans really are. But if they can, but if humans confused and tricked and don't believe that they're supposed to do that, and don't actually believe in, yes, the way, the truth, and the life. They don't believe that there is a certain correct way. They don't believe that it is beneficial for them to not change certain laws or certain rules. They don't believe that it's important to know the whole truth and nothing but the truth, as they used to say. No, they only want little bits of truth, and they don't think it's that important. It's more important for them to get their comforts in this world. They're at a survival level, most humans. The truth is not, the truth is not that important to a lot of people. And the life is not that important either, because they don't, we're not valuing all life. We're selective even what life we think is valuable. We think some humans' life is more valuable than others. We think that some animals' life is more important than others. We don't see a cockroach as valuable as our cat or dog that we have. But it's interesting, and I'm just going to be real clever here, and this is only what I'm not really clever, because it's just information I get, and then I say, oh, I get surprised. It's a bit like, would you think that the bee, which I only learnt myself recently, so I'm not a very academic or knowledgeable person. I'm in the dark. I'm old, and I've got this information only recently. Not that I was ever someone who went to swipe the bees, but the thing is that who in this world, up until maybe more recent times, because I would say this honestly, that even most of us, we would have probably thought, it's not just me, but most of us would probably say up to now, yes, I would not value a little bee that even will sting me and may cause me great physical discomfort. I've seen some people with their face blow up to twice the size when they're stung by a bee. Now, you wouldn't think that a little bee is more important than your beloved cat or dog. And I certainly wouldn't. Whereas in reality, it's not a question of what's the most important, but this is what I'm saying, is that all life is valuable, because that bee, we are now realizing, keeps this world going. Whereas maybe even our beloved animals might not have as much benefit to us. Oh, they benefit to us. So that is very important, because really, in a way, the funny thing is that human life is, strangely enough, what we are not valuing enough. Our own life and others, other human life, because all these things, the bee was put here to benefit us. Therefore, we should not want to kill it. And yes, you might say, yeah, but if it stings me, it will cause me a great allergy. Of course it will. But the reason it stings you is because it's letting you know how important it is. It's like, don't kill me. I will kill you first, because I provide life. Not to mention that you can get some nice honey out of it. Honey is nice. But they do serve a life importance, which I only discovered myself very recently, to keep plants and things and food growing and all this sort of stuff. It's all pollination and stuff. I can't go into it. I'm not up on that. I will say that I'm very guilty of getting a little bit of information and then pretending that I know a whole lot about it. But that does not mean that the little bit of information is not 100% correct. It is. This is the true purpose of even the little things on this planet. They're all part of a master plan. We unfortunately think that the nature is not that important. We don't think that that is the master plan or the master way that the world is meant to work. We think it's all about what we create, and we think it's all about technology. I've gone back onto technology. I must keep away from technology. But I do see, and I've said this a million times, as you know, that technology is definitely part of the negative force. It is not a positive force, I do not think. It can't be. It is used as part of the... Yes, it's positive only in the sense that it is meant to show humans some of the truth, and where they've went too far, and we are meant to put up opposition against it, that is what we are meant to do. The God entity says, hey, look what I'm doing. Come on, humans. If you don't put up opposition, you are not human, therefore I win, and therefore you have failed, and it is your fault, not mine, because I'm only here to put up the opposition. You are meant to come against that opposition. If you don't, then, you go down. You are meant to know that you are a natural being. You are meant to know that the artificial and the technology is not you, and it is not your world, and that it is not to your benefit. We half know this, but we don't. We think that it's okay to choose. We play God, and we can do that. But the thing is that we're not really playing God. When we say, oh yes, we will accept some technology because it's convenient, yes, that is our right, because it's our world. But we are wrong. And we are not really playing God at all. We are just being made redundant, because we are not the God of this world. We do not choose anything. It is all the God entity's world. He is the negative force. Everything we do is only, all we ever can do is provide the opposition, shall we say, in this game, to the negative force. That is all we can do now, because it is no longer our world. So we can't play God. I'm not sure if I made sense with that, but what I'm saying is we're not operating where we have full control over it. And if you think you are playing God, if you think that the only way you are playing God is whether you put up opposition to the matrix, to the God, or whether you don't. Because the matrix will determine most things. The matrix will do things, and will, it's not like we're in, that's why I say, this is what I've said, we have to go back in order to go forward. This is just my fantasy idea. I don't think that we should be going forward the way we are, because we're going further into the matrix. In other words, we're going more into the negative, and the matrix gets more power. So if you think you're a human and that you have any power, and you think you are God, you're giving your power and your God-like abilities, whatever they may be, over to the matrix. The matrix will, if you go into the technological world, and if you go and allow that to be the future, that is you relinquishing your power and giving it over to the technology, which is the matrix, which is the God entity. He's the negative force, and he's like, if you want to do that, you can come with me. You can come into my technological world, and I will, whatever. If you think that that is going to keep you safe and give you a better world, well, it's definitely here, and you'll be lucky if you can't go into it. So because the majority tends to rule anyway. But I'm saying that I think that we should actually be going back before we can go forward. I've said that 1,000 times. We need to go back before we can go forward, because we're not developed ourselves, and we don't have any power. And if we don't go the way, the truth, and the life, without quoting once again, because see, technology is definitely anti-life. I don't think there's much question about that. I think if you think that you can have a technological world, I mean, obviously you could have technology and you could still have some natural things. But why would you want that? Why would you want to have advanced technology, which is largely disruptive and destructive towards nature? This is what I personally think anyway. I don't think technology is conducive to natural things surviving. In fact, unless you kept them completely separate, the technology is destructive to natural things. Like talking about the bees, right? They're very small things, but they're essential for human life, evidently. Now, technology is going to disrupt their natural thing. It does. Technology, in my view, in my reality, definitely is destructive to the smaller life forms in particular, which is common sense in a way if you think of it. If it's not so healthy for me, and I'm a lot bigger than a bee, it's not going to be very helpful. Now, you might say, oh, we don't need the ants, we don't need the mozzies. They certainly are a nuisance to me at times, but that's the problem we face. The bee stings me, the mozzie bites me, but we do need them. They are not here accidentally. They are part of what is really ourselves and our world. We're in delusion world when we think that the technology is our world and that is our reality and our benefit. It's not. It's not at all. It is anti-human. It is anti the way. It is anti the truth, because it's not the truth. It is not beneficial. It is negative. It is a negative life force. It's not a life force at all. It's a negative force. If it was life, it would be okay, but it is not natural. It is not life. And the very type of technology we have is not natural at all. Anything that is natural or organic, if you can use that in any way, you may or may not need it, but because realistically speaking, that's right. At my level now, I might need, or think I need at least, certain forms of technology to do things for me, because I can't do them at full steam, at full capacity myself at a mental level now because of technology, I believe, and because of ignorance, and because we don't know, yes, the way, the truth, and the life. We've gone from those three things. Those three things, whoever said them and whatever, I don't care what you believe in, there's sense to that. If you deviate from the correct way of doing things, certain natural laws even, these laws are there not like the laws we have, which are there to restrict us and to restrain us and to make us feel secure, but basically they're just limiting us. Our man-made laws, are fake laws. They're not real. They're where we or someone, obviously it's probably more the Matrix, because the Matrix now becomes our reality. Society is the Matrix. Communities are the Matrix. All these things, they're all the Matrix, unless you're living naturally and you're living only in total trust and love, and not living in fear and and surrounded by technology or weapons and stuff to where you live, that you're really basically living in the matrix, and you are living, and you will abide by them laws. Their laws and their rules are negative. They are not the way. They are the matrix. They're not real laws. They are the matrix. They're not real laws. Real laws and real rules are common sense things that were put there for your benefit, for your survival, the correct way to do things. Humans should instinctively know these things. You shouldn't even have to have written laws, because some things humans would just know. They would just, and they would just trust, because they would know. I mean, I'm being very ideological here, of course. I'm going back to the Garden of Eden, back to paradise, back to the living library, as as I call it, or at least as others have called it, where everything was natural and there was no need of all this thing. It's because we have corrupted ourselves, or allowed ourselves to be corrupted. I don't think we corrupted ourselves. I don't think that. But even if you allow yourself to be corrupted, if you allow the matrix to corrupt you, if you allow another human being to corrupt you, because they will be corrupted by the matrix, it's like that. If a negative God puts up opposition, it's like that. If a negative God puts up opposition to you, and you say, oh, I shall go with the negative God, or I shall go with the serpent, or I shall do what I will, and I don't care, there's no consequences because I am God, I can do what I like, you can do that. You can do that. But, you won't be able to probably do it forever. In the long run, it will catch up with you, because it isn't the way, the truth, or the life. It's not the life. It's death in the long run. But it can serve temporarily, yes. So it's like that. We all get away with our, with not following the way, and with our sins, and with our mistakes, and with all for quite a lot. Some people get away with them for a lifetime. And who knows what happens after that then, you see. So you come back and you have to do it, maybe have to do it all over again. And then you have to do it in a more corrupt, more worse world, because the world is changing all the time, and you have to live in this technological, to me, technology is a prison. It has no benefit at all. It is nothing but a prison. But if you like living in a prison, that's okay. Some people do like being in prison. Some people actually don't mind living in a prison, because if the prison is not like, if the prison is better than, say, just a few bars and just a bed, and to where they're totally regimented and totally restricted, some people are even happy in that. But what I'm trying to say is, some people are happy in a very limited world, and they don't mind being restricted, provided they feel comfortable and safe, because they don't think. It'd be like myself, like I've never been overseas. Now, I probably have wanted to, but at the same time, I've convinced myself that, as my father used to say, he said, I've no desire to go overseas. Everything I have is where I am, is happy to live in a very limited amount of space even. And some people are like that. Now, I would say that that is the matrix. I would say that even he was very conditioned by the matrix, but he was happy with it. So nothing I could say any different, and it's not my business to change his mind or to expand that, and it's quite possible that, who knows how the mind works, it's quite possible that if he was dragged overseas, he might be no happier than, where he is. Because if you limit your mind and you think and you are conditioned to that way of thinking, you probably might not enjoy looking at certain things. It's like you can become that way. What about someone who is quite happy putting goggles on and looking at a virtual reality world of nature? See, I'm talking about nature here. I'm always going on about the natural world versus technology. Now, what about the sort of person who is happy to put the goggles on and they see nature? And hey, I could certainly do this because, if your physical body is not up for traveling or not up for climbing around on the rocks and the water and stuff, it would be a lot simpler to go into a virtual reality world. This is insanity. I couldn't help myself but say that. I'm sorry. Because if there are people there who like this, I really don't want to take their little happiness from them. If it makes them happy, it's sad for me to say you shouldn't do it. And it's not my right to stop you. But it is a delusion. You're going from an already deceptive world, a delusion, fantasy world, into even more fantasy world. Now, some people are fine with this. There's a gentleman that was on the YouTube that was saying, hey, I want this, I like this. I personally don't get it, but I do get it too, because I could have done it myself in the past. Because, like I say, if you get fearful to go outside, like if you're a bit agoraphobic, and particularly if outside is very daunting, if the matrix starts to become a little bit too much havoc, the rat race as they call it, and that's putting it mildly. For some people it's the rat race, for some people it's it's another world altogether. But either way, it's certainly not very relaxing or it's not like sitting and looking at a stream. And that's opinion too, I suppose. But, I've gone off track. But the thing is that, it's definitely going further away from, essentially what I've said before is that it doesn't matter, because if the truth and the life in particular, because if something's not life, what is the point? If you're doing something that is leading to your death, and I'm talking about spiritually here, but it is physical too. It's physical too, I would say, but because you can stagnate physically if you don't have the real thing. I think it's important personally, but still different people are stimulated different ways, and different species are definitely stimulated different ways. So that's another question altogether. Don't forget, this conversation is only for human beings, or if you want to become more human. Okay? If you want to go back to nature, go back to what we once were and become more human and more natural. And in my view, in my fantasy world, if you can do that, you will become more advanced. You will, if you're an intellectual and you want to be the best that you can be, in my view, that also is the way for you to expand. A lot of people wouldn't go with that. They would say, how can you expand intellectually just by going backwards, by going back to where you are natural and have less technology, and to where you start thinking for yourself again, and to where, what some people say, she's talking about being ignorant again. She's saying be uncivilized. No, I'm not. I'm saying that it is the way to be the most civilized. It is the way to be the most advanced. It is the way to being the most, because if we could do it, then we would know this is true. If we could do it, we would know it's true, because if by doing that you access other abilities that you can't have with technology anyway, or at least won't be able to have for a long time, and even if they are, they will not be yours, they will be controlled. Technology is not you, it's an outside force. It's the matrix. So you can have some things, but you're part of that system. You can't get away from it. You're not an individual. You're not a free spirit. You're definitely not a free spirit. You're not a free spirit human being. In my opinion, you will cease to be a human being. The human being will die. So, that's because if you think that you are a match for technology, you are not. Not if you incorporate it, not if it takes you over. It's like anything. You can think you're strong, but unless you separate yourself from things that are not good for you, it will take you over and it will possibly destroy you down the track. This is just, to me, that's a kind of common sense. But either way, like I say, for those that want to be more human, even if you're not human right now, if you want to be more human, you can go down that path too. You may or may not advance to certain levels. I don't understand all these things. I do believe that some humans have more abilities that way than others. The more authentically human and natural you are, the better chance you will have, if you are following the way, the truth, and the life, genuinely, if you can get back to it, you will be able to advance to the highest levels. Like I say, I just, in my imagination, this is my imagination, because you can see by looking at me, it's purely imagination because it's not a reality for me. But I still believe it to be true because I believe in these things. I believe in fantasy. Some people believe in the fantasy of technology. They think technology will be a fantastic future. That's fantasy too, because they don't know that. They believe it. They think it's correct. I'm just going in the other direction. I'm putting up opposition to the matrix, which is what we're supposed to do anyway. Because even if I was wrong, even if it was not true, even if technology and my way are both wrong, what if it's all wrong? We're still meant to put up opposition to the matrix. We're not meant to just be nothings on this earth. We're not just meant to just sit here and just let some other force totally take over. They're actually begging you to put up some opposition because that's what you put here for, and that's what they're there for. Because even they won't, unless they want to close the whole world down, which is another possibility. Like, unless you're looking to close this whole world down, which some people say end time, so that's a possibility, okay? It might seem funny to me, but it's a possibility. What if the God entity's had it? What if he finds the human beings too much pathetical opposition now, and he's played with them too long? They've messed him around for too long. They never totally took back their world. They don't have any merit. They've disintegrated and we've all gone down to nothing. But there's still a menace. They're like Dennis the Menace. They still won't let fully go. They drain his time. Time is running out for the God entity. He's a one-eyed God that sees things only his own way, and he's a God-like presence, and he sees himself as God, over humans in particular, but God anyway. And, he's wasted a lot of time. Maybe, maybe his technology is even draining him. Maybe he's got some followers that are also headed for extinction, as humans could be. They don't have to be. In fact, they shouldn't become extinct at all, because if they're spiritual beings, they're not supposed to die at all. But technology can close human beings down, I believe. That's my own personal view of technology, is that it's the only thing that has the potential at a proper level to actually finish human beings. Because technology is everything that humans aren't. A little bit of technology, yes, humans could survive because they're not taken over. But once you incorporate too much and you lose your own abilities, which we already have, and then you sort of say, well, we've lost those abilities, so I think we'll use the technology to get the abilities. That's what the God entity's done. That's what the minions have done. That's what they do. But if that's the case, how come some of them are almost, in my view, they're cloned out of existence? I just made that up. You can be cloned out of existence. You can duplicate so much. You can multiply in an unnatural way. You know, you can create with technology, but it's a lesser life force, from what I'm led to believe. You can create. You know, Dolly the sheep didn't look any different to the other sheep, but she didn't live as long. And can we get into Dolly's mind? Like, was Dolly missing something that the other natural sheep had? I would say probably. What you will have to think about that one. You know, so this is why I, in particular, think we have to be very careful. We need to keep a certain amount natural for our own survival, for our own benefit, because otherwise everything becomes too artificial, and then we become artificial. And you might say, well, who cares? Like the gentleman that says, I don't care if my body is carbon, silicon, orgonite, metallic, whatever. It doesn't care. Well, he should care, in my view. But it's reasonable, and he's a lot cleverer than me, much cleverer, I have to say that. It's reasonable that he should think that way, because if you're not coming from that standpoint, that you're a spiritual human being and that is your true advancement, and also if you aren't a spiritual human being, because if you did become a technical being, you would never be able to go back and be a spiritual human being anyway. So then you would be stuck with your technology, and you would be stuck here for a long time. It's possible that you could keep changing your body if you advance technologically enough, I would imagine. But every time you transfer that way, you're losing more and more. And you could survive. But that's what you are looking at. You're just looking at survival then, because you would be looking at a being, a technological being that wouldn't be able to do all the things that the spiritual human being should have been able to do just naturally. But that's a very hard argument, and it's hard. And if I was speaking to that gentleman that put that argument forward, I would not be able to convince him, because it just wouldn't make sense to him. Because he would say, "Hey, but you're not an advanced spiritual human being. Show me some of your magic. Show me how you can manipulate the reality. Show me." And I'd have to say, no, you'll have to go and watch one of those hocus pocus magicians that perform to see that. But, you know, they are from the dark side. So the light side looks very pathetical. So the argument in favour of going to the dark and to the technological, and to use technology for magic and for advancement and for survival, etc., puts up a lot more strength. It appears to be more valid. But that's only because if the human being is at its lowest level and cannot produce that magic, that same hocus pocus that the technology can produce, you know, because we are not aware, and because we have been conditioned and made limited by the technological matrix. You're only as good as your surroundings. That saying is quite true. You know, the same with the people you surround yourself with. How can you be a highly advanced spiritual human being full of love and good feelings and good vibration if you are surrounded with technological, psychopathic beings, so-called human beings that look human, but they are not human? How can you develop that? You won't even know what it is. If your mother and your father are technologically inferior, non-loving, feeling, thinking, compassionate, empathetic human beings, shall we say, all these words, you're not going to get that. You're going to be starved of that. So your development will be stifled. You will become much more likely to become like them. And then if the world around you is technological anyway, it's just going to seem normal. And at some point you will lose all the ability to go back and to be what you were meant to be. It won't even be possible. And you won't even think that it's possible. You think that, like you think when I'm saying, you say she's fairyland. And it will be fairyland too, because it will not be possible. And you'll be frightened to be it too, because you won't have any friends. Because everyone else will be a non-feeling, technological, intellectual type human being. And they will live that way. And so where would you live? Will it be like that, the movie that I saw only a week or two ago, and I didn't even look for it. It just come up. These things just come up on my computer. Technology has to show me the truth, you see. You have to be shown the truth, but you have to make a choice about it. You have to see it, but they have to show it to you, because otherwise, why do they show me all this stuff? Because I didn't look for the movie. But that movie, it was called Brave New World. It's quite well known, I believe. I'm ignorant of a lot of these things. I only saw it a week ago or something. And in that particular movie, that was a very good example of this same situation, actually, where most human beings were in the matrix, shall we say. They were in a world that was largely controlled, and most people were very happy in it. They had a certain lifespan. They accepted death. They accepted the technology. They thought the technology was beneficial. They felt good. They could be made physically feel good by taking certain drugs, shall we say, which was acceptable in the society. In fact, it was part of the society. It was a prerequisite for being in the society. It was a law almost, you could say. It was how the society operated. But at any rate, the thing is that they had this type of world, this brave new world, but they also had some people that were outcasts. They called them savages. They were what I would call an authentic human being, okay? But they were called savages. They were uncivilized. They were not as advanced in the eyes of the new world people who were controlled by technology. You could say they were controlled by it, really, because they lived that way. They were regimented in that respect. And they were happy too, because they didn't know any different, and they thought it was a good way to live. They thought the people who were savages or normal human beings, but don't forget they were like not given much either. So, but the thing is that there was a gentleman, a fellow that decided that he had the choice. He could go with the technology or go the more human way. But he found that he couldn't get away from the technology, even though he decided to just, yes, be ostracized and go on his own and be a loner, a hermit. But provided he could stay natural and just think for himself. He just wanted to think for himself, I suppose, and live as he wanted to live. But he found that he couldn't get away from the technology or the technological beings, no matter what, because that was, but at any rate, see the movie for yourself, I guess, called Brave New World, and it's interesting. I could talk more about it, but I can't remember all the details now. But I've rambled on again, and I know I'm repeating myself. I was going to say that I use movies as an example, and I always use movies as an example because I believe that movies are reality. Movies are fairy tales that I believe, as I've said before. To me, they are a quick, easy way to see what the real reality is. But you probably have to be a little bit, you will have to say, look, this is my history, this is my textbook when I look at a movie. You have to say, I'm going to enjoy this, but this is a textbook account of possibilities that already are. Nothing that is in a movie does not exist. It's just that it may not exist in your particular world, in your particular reality. You may not see, you won't see the matrix, you won't see the God entity, you won't see how advanced he is. You know, you won't see that in your own reality, but the movies will show you that future, which is already now. There is no time. I don't think there's any time. There's only the moment. But everything you see in that moment is already existing. It doesn't matter if you're seeing it on the TV or if you're seeing it in your own reality. Because obviously if I'm sitting here now and I look outside and then I watch some science fiction movie on the TV that appears to be set, 100 years in the future, where everything is vastly different, I think that is not reality, and I think this that's in front of me is reality. Whereas in reality, they are all in existence now at the same time. But just that I can't see that. I'm not existing in that reality. But it's a potential, and it's round the corner. It's already here, but I don't see it. But it's waiting to come into existence. And it shows you that. We have to be shown. And so it's showing you, hey, this is what will happen if you allow it, if you want it, if you like it, or if you don't like it, then you must be aware of it and put up some opposition to it, or at least try to be aware of that. So it's like that, but it's showing you all possibilities, all potential. Nothing is not real. And how far you could take that, who knows? Because like I say, if we actually can see, if I see something in a movie, but it's something I don't like, I've still took it in. And subconsciously, I might actually think, hey, that's going to happen anyway. I might not want it to happen even, but I might think, oh, that's inevitable. That becomes a negative, and then it will come into being. I don't know if I explained that very well, but I don't. It's hard for me to get my head around these things. It really is. It's like I say, we're just not conditioned or developed along these lines to where these things are a reality. We should know as much as the Matrix. We should know as much as the God entity. We should know these things, and he shows them to us, or it shows them to us, but we just think they're fantasy. We don't think they're real. But we should know these things, because then at least we're on a level playing field, and we can make clear choices then, at least. Even with this technology thing that I keep going on about, we're just not shown the whole picture. If we could see the future and then other possibilities, like that Brave New World movie, like that is showing that there is a choice. And, it wasn't showing that the human, if he chose to stay human, free human that is, like away from the matrix, it wasn't showing that that human will be a lot happier. No, it did show that it would be tough because the matrix has been allowed to become more technological, you see. So, and if it's everywhere, then there's not as much space left on this earth for others that wish to stay in a different, though, I mean, I suppose you could say that's true about, in other words, I suppose you could say that's true of most people. Are we all really living the life or being the way we really want to be, or do we just tend to accept mainly what's around us? Some of us adapt better than others and are still able to keep our spirits up, shall we say. But essentially that depends on the matrix, because, I've never lived out in the country and in a totally natural environment. I recommend it, but haven't lived it. I was able to adapt to a hustle and bustle city. And all things being equal, I could have kept my spirits up provided that city didn't turn too negative, provided I didn't see the matrix too much. But, now that I see it too much, it feels too negative. And everything is emphasized then, because how you think and perceive things, Also, it is a reality too, because the matrix, does operate that way. It is controlled by a conscious being and conscious entities that follow, and, so it's not an accidental thing. It's just a matter of whether you think they're correct or not. Like I say, it's your own view of what you think the world should be. But all I'm saying is that I don't think that the alternative world that should be is really presented, because it's not in existence, and it's not, like I say, you can't show human beings that the natural way is the best and the highest way. You can't, if a human being is missing out on certain things, but they've never been shown them or seen them, they don't know they're missing out. A bit like someone used to say to me years ago, you can't miss what you don't have. And that's what we're like. We can't miss what we don't have, because we're not shown. Like if I could fly, like if I theoretically speaking could fly, I've used this example before, but I'm not allowed to fly, and I don't believe I can fly, and I've never experienced flying. I mean, literally myself, not on an aeroplane, but I believe that the only way to fly is an aeroplane, and I think that's good. I will not know that I'm depriving myself. I will not know that I'm at a limited level. But if I could be shown that, and if it could become a reality, I think I would, I think most people would probably want to go back in order to go forward. They would want to become natural and develop their own abilities and their own skills. That's most humans, because they're, again, if you become, like I've said before, if you become too technological, then you will become limited. So therefore you won't be able to do that. But even if you become technological, maybe at some point in the future, when people are more technological, they might sort of decide, hey, I might not be able to ever go back and get abilities and be a supernatural human, but I still would like to be more free like humans used to be, even as a technological being. You might get sick of being controlled by the technology, because if you're a technological being, you will be controlled by technology, because that's what artificial human future is. it has to be, because it's operated by a computer, a control system computer, what would you call it? A big computer, a really big computer, a supercomputer would have to control things, would have to control the world, wouldn't it? I think it already does, actually, but you know, you know, but at any rate, before I finish, there was a movie. I'm going to go on to another movie, but I wish I could put these movies better. But this movie, wait for the technological plane to go overhead. Actually, planes are very unadvanced technology, really, in a way. They're noisy and they use fuel, all this sort of stuff that we say is backward, which is probably true, but it's still technology. So we have kind of, it's not great technology we have anyway, in many ways. But technology speeds us up too. I personally think we should slow down, because if you slow down, then you will start to think. If you too speed it up, you can't think. So you might be getting somewhere fast in a technological device like a plane, but you're not slowing down and operating your own mind. So it's not really an advancement or a benefit in some ways. But hey, that's the world we live in, because if you have to do that, then you have to do it. So it does become a problem. So it's not like everyone's got a choice, and this is the truth. None of us have much of a choice. We're not able to relax and to even try the old way, just as we are not trying to use our thinking to create the reality. I said this before, and before I go on to the thing I've said before, it would be good for real human beings to try it. But you have to put your technology down for a second and try to think clearly and think with a good feeling, a positive feeling and emotion behind it, if you can manage that in this world, you know, and see if you can't bring into being some thought in a simple way. As I said before, see if you can't, what's the word they say, manifest. And they use that word now because they like you to know what you really should be and then laugh at you because you're so far from it. You know, it could make you cry if you really thought about it. It's some emotion, I suppose. But, you know, see if you can't do it. See if you can't bring some small thing even into being in a physical way. Test the psychic abilities too. See if some people aren't reading and picking up something. There might still be something there, is what I'm saying. If you could get together with the right people, you might be able to actually prove some of these things. You could prove it for me, and you could prove it for yourself. I'm betting on it. You know, I'm not a betting person, but I bet personally that there is more truth to all these things, you know. And it would be nice if we could all try it, because then at least you would be making a clear decision about what future you do want. That's if we are allowed that choice, you know, because, you know, it's not our world. And like I say, numbers count too, because not everyone is of this mindset and not everyone is the same. So it's a problem. But still, you know, we only have the moment, and it would be nice to try these things and see if to look for the truth at least. You can't make a proper decision if you don't know what the truth is. If you don't know what abilities you have, if you don't know what abilities the world has, if you don't, you know, if you're not the way, the truth, and the life too. Look at the life on this planet. You know, like I mentioned, the bees, which only come to light to me very recently. This life on this planet is being closed down. We do it, and it is done to us. And it's not a benefit to lose natural things that are life-giving. It doesn't matter whether you really care about these things or not, even just for your own survival. And like I say, you don't know what the Matrix has in mind, because you're up. It's a bit like when you believe in God. You don't know what your God wants you to do. You don't know what the God has planned for you. You don't know what the God thinks is good or bad for you or for this world, because it is largely about human beings in this world, strangely enough, I think. Even though, like I said in the past, I would have went more with other life forms. But in reality, I now think that this matrix only functions because of human beings. It ceases to exist if there's no human beings in it. Maybe that is another possibility. Maybe the God entity wants to close the matrix down. Maybe, like I say, he's been here too long. The humans have went too far. They've not developed. They've, you know, but also there's not well, see, you've got to realize that you have to say, what are the motives for the matrix? What is the motives of the God entity? What, like, is it about a perfect world? Is it about closing down a world? Is it what is the goal of it? And do you think that goal is the correct one? Do you think it is the way? Do you think it is the truth? Do you think it is life? And what sort of life too? What sort of life? Will it be a better life? Will it be a most advanced life? Or will it be lesser life? So it's like that in a way, But I was just going to say before I left, I said yesterday about the numbers, that there are different types of human beings, that there is positive and negative, and the different forces, and that well, let me just use another, what I'd say, a movie that will be like an analogy, and you are to speculate about it, whatever you like. And it's a simple movie. Once again, I'm picking old movies. See, movies don't matter in a way. It doesn't matter if you pick a movie. This movie is 1932. That is old. Movies only come into being, or where they started, even in the 30s, really. 1932. That's talkie. Before that, there were no talkies. But movies don't matter that way, because movies have always been showing us stuff. Always. It's just that now they show so much more. And I should watch more of the later ones, but they'd probably be too much for me. But in a way, they will show much more of what. But even the old movies show you little ideas that if you start to wake up a little bit, you'll say, hey, this is how it's done. See, in this movie, 1932, it's called The Lost Patrol. You won't want to watch it because it's all black and white and a bit fuzzy. But in this movie, The Lost Patrol, yes, I can get a lot out of a little. I'm one of those people, But that's because I like old things. I'm not impressed by the future and the science. I believe only in the potential of a human being. I believe that's the all. I think that is what this world is meant to be. So I'm not impressed by the robots and technology and all that stuff. Oh, yes, I do find it fascinating, and sure, it is visually, special effects, whatever, but it's not really what I think is. It's only impressive because, because I'm limited. If I could, when I see some people doing some things that I can't do, I know that there is potential for humans to be more special. and to develop more abilities. So I know this because I see it, but it's not something that is. I say if you can develop a little skill, a little ability, there's no reason you can't develop more, because I say, hey, if we're operating only at junk DNA 95% or something, I'm like that, because the body is what does all these things. Some people have said this, and it's true, they say this. So I believe this. I say, hey, that makes sense to me. That we're not, because I've seen a bit of this even in my own self. I've seen when I've been better in the past and how I felt and knew that I could do more. A bit like, you hear of these strange stories like where, when you get really angry or you get a real spirit comes into you. Like when the lady lifted the car up to save her baby. This is physically impossible, but it was done because of the spirit. See, this is why I'm believing this sort of stuff, these sorts of things that you hear about. At our natural knowing physical level, that should not be possible. So that's why I'm saying the high spiritual level, even though I don't understand it myself, that spirit came over her, like the movie that I mentioned before where the 12 beat the 140. It was the spirit that gave the extra power. And it was the same where you can even get superhuman strength, admittedly only for a few seconds. But hey, that is still showing you something. Unless these stories are totally fabricated, and I don't think they are, I think they're reasonably proven. So therefore, I have to say, how is this possible? Or do I just dismiss that and say it's random? Well, of course it's random because it's only one event, but it still happened. This was a human being, so if it happened, just because it doesn't happen to billions and only happens to one, that's because we are all limited, and that is just it. And that's very hard for us to accept or to comprehend, but it's true. And then when we see something out of the normal, we almost just walk away and dismiss it. We don't even want to look at it because we're like, hey, we couldn't do that. That's because we can't get it. It seems impossible, but it happened. And it should happen for everyone, because that was just another human being. It wasn't someone that was genetically made into some sort of super duper thing, or was some strong man that was in a small female form. No, look, it's you got it. That's being realistic to me, because that happened. That was real. So I'm saying why. Other people don't bother saying why. I didn't either until now, but now I'm saying why. And, but anyway, The Lost Patrol, 1932, a very old movie. In that movie, it was out in the desert, right? It's called The Lost Patrol because there was a group of soldiers who were out in the desert and they got lost. They were on patrol, a group of them, and they were trying to find another patrol because they were in the desert, but they got lost. They were completely isolated. And what happened was, if memory serves me correct, they encountered some Arab forces, shall we say, that were in the desert, that lived in the desert. They were hostile. They wanted to kill the lost patrol, the group of soldiers, men that were, they set up camp hoping to find their way to their other fellow human beings. But they were surrounded by Arabs that lived in the desert that were hostile to them because they fired and attacked them or whatever, okay? But they killed one of their patrol. The Arab force, which they never saw, They never saw one Arab, ever. They never actually saw the figure, I don't think, of an actual Arab. They might have seen one at the most, but they didn't actually see. But there was gunfire, and they realised that they were under threat. So they killed one of them, right? But the story goes like this, right? Essentially what happened was, the main fellow that was in charge of the patrol, he had to make certain choices to keep his men safe. And his assumption was that they were, they couldn't see the enemy forces, shall we say, but they assumed that there was, quite a few of them, and that they could pick them off, which is what they did do. They picked them off one by one. One by one. They didn't come in and take over the whole patrol, which was a group of men. They picked them off one by one until in the end there was only one left, or two left. In the end, only one left out of the whole patrol. That's what's called the lost patrol. But what happened in the end was, due to the decisions and the assumptions that the leader of the patrol and the men had made, they realised in the end, the one man that was left at the end, the leader of the lost patrol, the one army man, he's supposed to be like us. He's the good guys. He's one of us, like the others were, because they were the same as us. But at any rate, at the end, when he's the only one left, and they've been picked off one by one, killed, the enemy, the Arabs that had killed the whole patrol, come to get him because he was only one left. And there was only two of them, or a few of them. In other words, what I'm saying is that, to his amazement, the lost patrol really was never in a dangerous situation. They were outnumbered. There was more of the lost patrol, more of them, than what there was of the Arabs or the enemy. There was only a few. But because they picked them off one by one, they were all killed. In reality, the lost patrol had many more men than what the Arabs or the enemy had. They had deceived them. He shouldn't have lost his whole patrol. They shouldn't have been killed at all. He had the numbers, but he didn't know that because he was operating in a hocus pocus world. He could not see the enemy. He assumed when he got the gunfire the way that they were picking them off and getting them all, because they just had the knowledge, because they knew the desert and they could see them and they could anticipate and set them up. Basically, they picked them off one by one, whereas in reality, if it had been a full-on battle, the lost patrol had many more men than what the Arabs had. There was only two, and there was many more. They thought that the lost patrol thought they were outnumbered. They thought there were many Arabs out there, many enemies. And this is what happens sometimes. In this old movie just come to me, that, it's not about, it's about deception. It is about smoke and mirrors. That was a good example of it. If you don't know what the matrix is, if you don't know your enemy even, if it's something working against you, like the lost patrol, you don't know what exists in this real world, you are going to make assumptions, and they might be wrong assumptions. You'll be picked off one by one. You'll be defeated. Human beings are defeated one by one. They defeat themselves by their ignorance, and we defeat ourselves by making the wrong choices. We don't go the way, the truth, and the life. if we followed those three things, even though I don't know where they come from, we probably would make just independent, correct decisions, and we wouldn't be picked off one by one, and we wouldn't pick one another off one by one. You know, I'm sounding very airy-fairy here, but that movie was like that. It shown that there was deception there. They made wrong choices based on deception, by assumptions, wrong assumptions. They should have won. They shouldn't have been all dead, you know, because they were not outnumbered like they thought at all. They had more power, but they thought they had none. They thought they were trapped. They thought the enemy, the Arabs, had the upper hand. They thought that that they were victims. They had no idea that that they could have stormed those Arabs at any time and killed them and save their whole patrol. They didn't know that. But they let themselves be picked off one by one until there was none left. Only one fella left. Could have been none left, in fact. In fact, if he hadn't have been a very good shot and actually been able to shoot two, because in the end it was just him against two, but he was able to shoot two. Otherwise, it would have been, they'd have all been gone, because in reality there was only two enemy. But their strategy and their smoke and mirrors and their ability to hide. If you can't see your enemy, or you can't see the matrix, you know, even if you don't think it's an enemy, but if you can't see what's negative, you can't see the truth, you know, you're at a big disadvantage, you know, and that's just an example. I do pick very airy-fairy examples, don't I? I hope that it doesn't bore everyone too much or be too... I'm sure I could pick better movies and better examples and put it better. And for that, I'm sorry, but it's the best I can do. You know, I don't like to be too direct about it all anyway, because I don't know all the details anyways. That's another thing too. We are in a world where, particularly even with myself, like I don't have all the details. Once you know what the scenario is, you know, you've found the truth to some extent. But if you haven't got all the details, you don't know the full thing, you're still operating at a disadvantage. And also, you know, we could well be at the point too, which is being a bit negative, but you know, that this may or may not be a reality. And just because it's my reality, by the way, doesn't mean it has to be yours. Because each person will be in a different place, a different part of the world, whatever, might have more support, might have more backup, might be in a different situation. So that will give you more ability to see and to manoeuvre, etc. But it could well be that, like the Lost Patrol, once the patrol was picked off too many, once it got down to a limited number, like once it got down to the last two, then it was even keel anyway. You know, so the fellow was lucky to survive it all. You see what I'm trying to say is that at the beginning, they didn't think they had the upper hand, but they did, because they had the numbers, but they didn't know the situation. They didn't know what the big picture was. You know, if they'd have been able to see that there were only two Arabs against them in the desert, they wouldn't have had a problem. But they assumed that they were up against a bigger force. They felt powerless. They felt like victims, and they became victims, you know. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that that's another thing too. If you let the world and everything around you get too out of sync to where you lose your fellow men, that's right, they get picked off one by one. At some point you are coming down to where then you are going to be at a disadvantage, whereas you know, the more you go into the matrix, the more you get into the dark, the more you don't know what the truth is, the more you don't go the way. In other words, if you are following the matrix and the matrix is misleading you into things that are negative for yourself, away from you growing and being at your best, which it can be the case, even though it might not seem that way, because I do see that a lot. Even some things that I would have believed myself years ago, I now not only don't believe, but it's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of what is the way, the truth, and the life. Yeah, in other words, what is for the best for you. It's no good saying, oh yes, it's okay to be free thinking, free this, do what you like, accept this, accept that. But if that makes a world that is less for you and less for them, it's not always, you know, it's just not going to be a benefit for the whole in the end either. But of course that will be that's another argument, and that also is a dangerous thing, because all of us tend to have this idealistic view of what should be, because we're no longer just natural and doing what we should. We're everything has to be extreme now because we've let it go so far. Whereas in reality, even with my thing of saying that we're going too much one way and leaving nature behind, leaving our natural human self behind, that's only a problem because we have gone so far that way. So you have to then become extreme and idealistic. Like I'm in the position now of saying, hey, we have to go back in order to go forward. Yes, we have to throw away things. We have to let go of what appears to be a benefit in order to go back, because we've took the wrong path, because we're, so we have to make it, so that means we have to temporarily make it harder for ourselves, which not many people are wanting to do that. I certainly wouldn't look forward to that myself. But like if you believe that something is bad for you, even though you are dependent on it, and it is what is presented as the future, it's a certain amount of common sense rationale should say, hey, that has to be something that we need to look at. But of course, we're not even looking at alternatives either. That's another thing too. We're not looking to compromise, are we? We're not saying, oh yes, perhaps we should, go back a little bit or slow things down even a bit. We shouldn't be rushing into a new world without thinking about it, without seeing what it really will be. We're meant to have a crystal ball, but I think most of us don't, and I'm sure if we had a crystal ball, but we do have a crystal ball, that's the thing. I think we have a crystal ball. I think the movies are the crystal ball. See, I should have my own crystal ball. I should know these things, but we are limited now. But we do have a crystal ball, because even our benevolent dark side shows us in the crystal ball the potential and the possibilities. Even he, she, it has to do that and does that, and appears to be benevolent, shall we say, in that. But we don't know that that is a gift, that is the crystal ball. Because he doesn't always want to show you the crystal ball, because he's like, hey, he'd prefer it if you just go into the new world, shall we say, because if you've already set down plans, it's a bit too much effort to change back. And also, that is their world. That is their world. They're not interested in going back now, I don't think. I don't know if they can. I don't know if they would want to. But certainly once you go too far, you have a dream, shall we say, or an ideology, and you visualize that and you put a lot of effort into it and you become unbalanced in that obsession with it, it's very hard to say, but I see it that way because it's definitely an unbalanced world. So I would think that that they're not able to do that or not interested in doing it or whatever, but they still have to give you the crystal ball, and the crystal ball is the movies. Everything that is in the technology is a crystal ball just the same. So as negative as that technology is for you and for us, I think, at a physical and a mental level, it still does offer your only chance of seeing truth. So you've got to use it for that purpose. If you can use it for that purpose, if you can't do that yourself, which I know I can't, but some people, you should be able to, but can't, then it is presented. We have to be shown the truth, some sort of universal law, rule, condition, and it certainly keeps the matrix going too, because then the God entity says, look, the matrix is here, humans have free will, there is nothing being violated. You know, they pick one another off one by one, or let us do the same. Doesn't matter. You know, we set up the conditions, but they have the choice of how they react to the conditions. It's our game, but it's their choice. So it's their game too, in a way. But, you know, that if they want to relinquish the game, if they want to find the game too difficult or want to play on our side, or you know, whatever, you know, they've still got that choice. And even if the technology makes decisions for them, that is still their choice, because they will go to the technology for the choice. You know, no one is forcing them at this, well, I was going to say them, no one's forcing them, but at the same time, once all humans decide that it's convenient and they use the technology, or even if they let others convince them that it's good, and everybody's using it, and then yes, you do have to then become a hermit, like in that Brave New World movie, and that's not a choice that most people can do. Most people can't do that, even if they thought it was better to walk away from some of the things that are in this world. They just can't do that. They're like, oh, I can't become a hermit. But that could well end up being some people's only choice if they wish to stay an authentic, natural human being that is not controlled by technology, shall we say, you know. So, but that's because we've let the world go into extremes. It should be where, I would say personally, that it should be to where, yeah, like that other gentleman said, but I don't know why he says it, because I don't think it would be possible. That's the problem. You know, to where each person can make their own choice about what sort of world they want. But like I say, if something is all around you and everybody uses it and you have to become a hermit, and I'm not sure where you'd go in this matrix Earth to actually get completely away from technology anyway. I would think that there would be very few places where you could, but certainly, but then how do you survive? We are not equipped to survive. Our abilities are not developed as a human being to survive now either. We are dependent on an artificial world, you know. In other words, if I'm meant to be able to, as I've said before, regulate my body temperature and not have to wear a lot of clothes when it's cold or hot or this, that is not the reality of my existence now, because I'm limited. So if I choose to become a hermit, I'm not going to be able to just go anywhere and be comfortable, and survive at a physical level because I'm limited and I'm not going to be able to create and visualize and sustain myself. In other words, I'm not going to be able to provide myself with food and water and yes, survival mechanisms wherever I go. I'm not going to be able to do that, and I'm not going to buy food and stuff like this. This is the matrix, you see. This is not a human being providing for themselves. That's not, you know. So what I'm saying is that it's a very difficult catch-22 now. I'm sure there's some sort of solution to it, but I'm not sure that I can see it. But it could well be that some people will just make their choices and that, like that title, it will require, I would think, individuals that are fairly strong and not frightened. See, the lack of fear, if you don't have fear, I'm fearful just making the video, but see, what I'm saying is that without fear, then you will accomplish much anyway. And even if you don't succeed totally, if you don't have fear, it won't matter, you will get there. It's the fear, really, that defeats human beings. It's that emotion is caused by the matrix. Fear of not being able to sustain yourself. Fear that you are limited, which you have been made. Fear that you can't survive on your own. Fear that you couldn't be the hermit that wants to go away from the brave new world, that wants to develop his own skills and be human, and doesn't want to be a mind-controlled humanoid like being of the future of the Brave New World movie, shall we say? That's just that movie, you know, and you know, that's the thing, you know. Anyway, I better close off. Thank you for listening, if anyone has, and good night.